It takes years to truly evaluate the impact of an NFL draft class, and when it's all said and done, some draft classes are better than others. Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses. With that in mind, when looking back at the 1985 NFL draft, one thing becomes abundantly clear. It was an absolute nightmare for NFL quarterbacks. Before we dive into some of the individual players, let me first set the stage for just how crazy this class was. It would be hard to argue against calling this the greatest class of pass rushers in NFL history. I'll put it this way, the 1985 NFL draft class is the source of 3 of the top 5 sack leaders since sacks started being officially tracked in 1982. An argument could even be made for 4 of the top 5 sack leaders, but I'll get to that later on in this video. Either way, officially 3 of the NFL's all-time leaders in sacks come from the same draft class. Just absurd. Let's dive in. The first player on our list is defensive end Bruce Smith, who was taken with the number 1 overall selection by the Buffalo Bills. His rookie season was slow, for his standards at least, with only 6.5 sacks. However, he would go on to register double-digit sacks in 13 of his next 15 seasons. Smith would play in Buffalo for 15 years, before signing with Washington in 2000. He would play there for 4 seasons before finally calling it quits in 2003. In that final season, 19 years after being drafted, now at 40 years old, Smith still registered 5 sacks. And with those 5 sacks, he became the NFL's all-time sack leader with an even 200 sacks. He also finished with 43 career forced fumbles, 2 safeties, 2 interceptions, and 1,224 combined tackles. Smith was awarded 2 NFL Defensive Player of the Year awards in 1990 and 1996, as well as 11 Pro Bowls and 8 first-team All-Pros in his Hall of Fame career. Not a bad way to kick off this draft class. Our next pass rusher on this list is Kevin Greene, who was drafted in the 5th round, number 113th overall, by the Los Angeles Rams. Greene's career didn't start the way you would think a top 5 sack leaders would. He didn't register a single sack in his rookie year, and put up solid but not great numbers as a rotational player his first 3 years in the league. However, in his 4th season, Greene was finally unleashed, racking up 16.5 sacks and continuing to put up double-digit sacks in 9 of his remaining 11 years of his career. Greene would bounce around between the Rams, Steelers, Panthers, and 49ers as he got older, but his production never slowed down. In fact, well over half of his career sacks came in his 30s, with a league-leading 14.5 sacks at 34 years old, followed by 10.5, then 15, and finally retiring at 37 years old after a 12-sack season in 1999. Overall in his career, Greene put up 160 sacks, which is 3rd all-time on the official sack leaderboard. He also finished with 23 forced fumbles, 3 safeties, 5 interceptions, and 734 combined tackles. Greene was awarded 5 Pro Bowls and 2 first-team All-Pros in his Hall of Fame career. Rounding out the players from the 1985 draft class who finished in the top 5 in sacks is Chris Doleman, who was selected in the 1st round, 4th overall by the Minnesota Vikings. Following a similar trend to the previous 2 players, Doleman's career started off slow, getting only 3.5 sacks across his first 2 seasons. But in year 3, Doleman accumulated his first double-digit sack performance and forced a league-leading 6 forced fumbles. His most dominant season came in 1989, in which he led the league in sacks with 21, and forced 5 fumbles along with it. Doleman would play with the Vikings for his first 9 years of his career, before joining the Falcons for 2 years, 49ers for 3 years, and finally returning to the Vikings for one final season in 1999 at age 38. Also similar to the other guys on this list, Doleman got better with age, registering a 1/3 of his career sacks from age 35 to 38, showcasing top-tier talent to the very end. When it was all said and done, Doleman had 150.5 career sacks. good for the 5th highest since sacks started being tracked in 1982. He also ended up with 44 forced fumbles, 2 safeties, 8 interceptions, and 975 combined tackles in his 15-year NFL career. During that time, he was also awarded 8 Pro Bowls, 2 first-team All-Pros, and of course, a spot in Canton. Alright, now it's time to address the elephant in the room. I've talked about the 5th, 3rd, and 1st all-time sack leaders in NFL history, all from the 1985 draft class. But the 2nd all-time sack leader is an interesting argument, who, if included, could really push this draft class over the top, if it isn't already over the top. The 2nd all-time leader in sacks is none other than Reggie White. The problem with including White on this list is that he wasn't technically drafted by an NFL team. In 1984, White was drafted by the USFL's Memphis Showboats. He played for 1 season with the Showboats, racking up 23.5 sacks before the league collapsed in 1985. It's then that White would sign a deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. So while he wasn't drafted by an NFL team in 1985, he was technically an NFL rookie in 1985. Would you consider White to be an undrafted free agent and part of this 1985 draft class? Or would you eliminate him from this list because he wasn't actually drafted in 1985? I could see the argument going either way, but for me personally, I'm not going to include him as part of this draft class. With that being said, still having 3 of the top 5 all-time sack leaders coming into one draft class instead of 4 of the top 5 isn't all that bad. I'll still safely say this was the greatest draft class in terms of pass rushers in NFL history. But up to this point, I've only mentioned 3 of the pass rushers in this draft class. There are still others, although not as notable. Let's take a quick look at some of the other names that round off this draft class. First is Simon Fletcher, who was drafted in the 2nd round by the Denver Broncos and finished his 10-year NFL career with 97.5 sacks, placing him tied for 44th all-time on the official sack leaderboard. The other name in the top 100 NFL sack leaders is Ray Childress, who was drafted number 3 overall by the Houston Oilers and garnered 76.5 sacks over his 11-year NFL career, placing him 87th all-time. And there you have it. There are others, but those are the notable pass rushers who ended their careers in the top 100 all-time in terms of sacks, including 3 of the top 5. That is insane production from the 1985 NFL draft class. Do you agree that this class holds the spot as the greatest pass rusher draft class in NFL history? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed content like this, I would highly appreciate it if you guys gave this video a like, and even considered subscribing in order to stay notified of future uploads. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.